What's going on, Black Baseball Mixtape family? Flobo Boyce here. It's in the booth. Now, as I record, this is June 25th. It's my birthday. So you know what the best birthday present is? Getting the most positive Mets fan on the planet. Welcome. Jingleman, how you doing?
Very good. Happy birthday, brother.
Oh, man, thank you. I said, look, no more meetings after this one because this is what we call a get, man. You're like a celebrity, man. You're like a celebrity.
I appreciate that, man. I'm a very niche celebrity, if you want to call it even a celebrity, man. But
So,
I'll take it.
well, let's talk about the fact you are called Jingle Man. I mean, not only do you do jingles by day, we'll get that in a second, but by night is what people really know you for. You're a fan of the New York Metropolitans, and you decide to put the music side together. What was the first time where you were like, you know what, I'm on to something here?
So back in 2019, I want to say, I did a jingle about J.D. Davis, and it wasn't very fancy. You know, it was just me sending a message to a friend talking about when you're down a couple runs and you need runs now, call J.D. Davis, 877 runs now. And then he sent it to a friend, and then a bunch of people were like, yo, this is crazy. And then I put it on Twitter, and people were like, what? And it just became a whole thing.
Yeah, and when people came up to you and they were like, "Yo, is that you?" Because that song has like transcended fandom. Because J.D. Davis has become a journeyman. He's pretty much has been traded like a bunch of times. Like now is currently a Yankee as I record this.
He's
So like,
currently a Yankee, and
yeah,
he got the start, I believe, at first base against David Peterson and the New York Mets
let's
starting
go.
tonight.
Starting tonight. And so that must be crazy to see something really be truly viral. Like as a creator, we think about our legacies, but that's kind of interesting seeing that there's fan bases nationwide that pass your songs around.
Yeah, you know, the craziest part for me about that first jingle that popped off is that you eventually saw it on SNY as a commercial, and they were doing the talking heads and everything like that. And a bunch of the people that follow me and knew its origin were like, "Yo, they should be like shouting you out or compensating you." I was like, "Nah, this is cool enough that
Yeah.
that idea just jumped off." So that's a conversation I constantly have with people. You know, if they hear my work elsewhere, it gets tricky as
Yeah.
this stuff gets more prevalent. But
Let's take a step back. 30 teams in Major League Baseball. And people always ask me this, but why the Mets, man? I mean, there's some seasons that make us go, dang. What made you decide to choose our team and why are you still rocking with the squad?
yeah, so when I was around 5 years old, I started watching baseball. Nobody told me to watch baseball. My parents didn't watch baseball. My sisters did not watch baseball, but I was flipping through the channels. There were the Mets, there were the Yankees, right? The Mets, well, let's start with the Yankees. The Yankees, they had black on, their theme music was more like, I'm like, I'm not feeling that, right? And then you got the Mets. They got the orange, the blue, the colors were popping. And I like the announcers, and I just gravitated more towards that. So I just started watching the Mets, and then it just became a thing. And I stuck with them ever since. Now, in the 90s, in the early 90s, late 80s, the Yankees were just as bad, I believe,
Yes.
from what I remember.
No, they're
So,
terrible.
right. So it wasn't, Mel Hall, Steve Sachs, those people, it wasn't that great. So it wasn't that obvious to just pick one, but I stuck with the Mets. I rolled with them. They had a guy, Doc Gooden. He was magic to me. I was like, oh, okay. So someone that looks like me could actually do this at an elite level and dominate. So, that was another part of it. So,
It's funny. It's funny for me because I became a Mets fan when I was younger. My parents, just for a backstory, I know long-term listeners have heard this a bunch of times, but my parents are immigrants. They're from the West Indies. My parents watched cricket And so when they moved here to assimilate, they just put on American cricket to understand the game. So both teams were in the household. I became a Mets fan because there was more people that looked like me. So by the time I was a kid, it was Butch Husky and Bernard Gilkey, and people, and Mo Vaughn a little later on. And as a fat kid, I liked Benny Agbayani. He's my favorite Mets of all time. I ask you this question now because if you look on the roster, there's only one person identifies as being a person of color. That's DJ Stewart. Is that something that you think about when you're at the game? We go, hey, look, there's not people that look like me for my kids and next generation, or it's kind of a thing that where it's like we overthink that aspect of the game.
Well, it's funny. I had West Indian parents as well, origin from Haiti.
Okay, so, Barbados over here. Yeah.
There you go, West Indies, baby. But no, that's a great question. I feel like I do think about it often, and when there are black players on the Mets, I really go hard for them. Cliff Floyd was definitely a favorite of mine. I also claim Delgado as well. He was fantastic. But as far as DJ Stewart, I did look up his background, and I do root for him as a person of color. And, even though his batting average isn't great, but his power numbers are absolutely phenomenal. He even was on an interview recently talking about, a reporter asked him what his motivation is these days. And he's like, diaper money. And I'm like, well, I can relate to that, but it is something that I think about, and I do really root for people of color across the game often, especially when they're on the Mets, and I definitely think it's a special thing.
It's funny because one of my buddies has his first kid. He was always like the party guy, but once he has that kid, he turns into like the most like mathematical dude ever. It's like, did you know diapers are 84 cents a poop? You're like, I don't know, brother. I don't have any of my own.
It changes you. Parenthood changes you, but it changes you for the better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't have kids of my own. But I hear that fatherhood is a gift. So props to you holding it down. Just positive fathers and lives. And you said Carlos Delgado. He too, his birthday is today. I think he's like 1972. Yeah, 1972. So shout out to Carlos Delgado on that one.
Shout out to Delgado, man.
So you talk about black players in the game in total. Do you take time to follow anyone in particular? Anyone you're a fan of right now that you're like, oh man, hopefully he becomes to Queens in the future?
Oh man, that's a great question. The White Sox shortstop Tim. He was on my fantasy team.
Tim Anderson, TA7.
Yeah, Timmy Anderson. Yes, thank you for the help on that one. Yeah. He's no longer on the White Sox, so he's now on the Marlins, right?
Mm-hmm, correct.
Yeah. I rooted for him. His numbers started to decline. But as far as other black players, we got, even though it's Latin descent, you got De La Cruz, which is very special. As far as the other minorities on other teams, I'm not as well versed as I should be.
Sure.
I'm very Met-centric right now.
You know what? I am too, and it's funny because we have a Discord for Black Baseball Mixtape, but I was arguing about that because most of the fans in that Discord are like Astros, Yankees, and Braves, so nobody wants to talk about New York. But I always think that the Mets are kind of like an identity mark for me. I'm from Brooklyn. I live in LA now, but I have a whole collection of Mets caps because that's just how I was raised and that's what I represent. So it means a lot to me as a fan. But back to you and what you're doing. What's interesting to me is that even though we have bad stretches, people turn to you as a beacon of positivity. So my question for you is that hard sometimes to be like, you know what? Sometimes I gotta look at the bright side, or you're just like, no. Forget the fact that we lost 7 in a row or 5 in a row to start the season. There's some good things to look at.
That's a great question. So full disclosure, behind closed doors, I'm not as positive, 100% of the time.
I know what you mean.
And those that are in my group chats, those that DM me often, sometimes they get the raw Jingleman. There are some, certain players that I get frustrated about. But for me, it's important to keep that part behind closed doors because at the end of the day, there's another game to play, and from a competitive standpoint and an athletic standpoint, like being a former athlete and being a coach, like you have to put that behind you and look forward. So I kind of use that vantage point to put it into the Jingle Man and kind of try and look at the positive angle more often than the negative angle. And if I'm going, and I want to kind of project positivity and positive energy onto Mets Twitter, because 90% of it is negative, right? So I try to tip the scales that way. You know what I mean?
So is there like a negative Jingle Man burner account I can get access to? Like, can it be lurking in the corner? Like, how does he really feel about Jeff McNeil? Nah, I'm just totally kidding.
Well, no. So Jeff is actually, I've gone on record to call him my favorite Met right now. So I've been getting a lot of flack for it. But yeah, behind closed doors, I'm very frustrated because I know he's capable of better. But
sure,
you won't catch me in public bashing him like everyone else right now.
So the reason why I ask you all that preamble stuff is that people outside of our fan base will say there's perceptions about the negativity, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to name names, but there's certain people that tend to be heavily featured when the Mets do fall on their face, which happens an awful lot if you've been following the team. So I guess the question I have for you is, I understand the drive to be positive, and but like, is that impact your approach to creating your music? Does that impact you say, hey, look, man, we lost by 45 billion runs, but my man Minaya, he had a couple of strikeouts. I'm gonna do a song about him? Or is it kind of things like you look at a chart and you go, oh man, I don't have any bops for Tyrone Taylor. He's due. Like, how does that approach your creation?
So, during the off season, I always look at the roster construction and I go up and down the roster to see what I can create for each player. Mm-hmm. As it pertains to how I use the content and when I use the content, I do have rules. And one of the rules is I typically do not jingle if we're trailing, right? And when I do jingle, we're either tied or we have a lead. And it has to be an RBI situation. If it's for a pitcher, it's never going to be during the game prior to their start being complete. Or if they're a reliever, it's never going to be until after they've completed a solid inning. So there are the Jingle Man rules that I try to follow.
Fair enough. Do you worry about going to the well one too often? Like if someone's on a hot streak, do you say, okay, you only get one song per run, I'll holler back you next month? Or if someone's just producing every day, you're like, okay, I'm going for it.
So I try to keep it as fresh as possible. Sometimes when players get ridiculously hot, I just take my foot off the gas a little bit and kind of, reduce it. But if you look at it though, Nemo's got 3 different jingles. Lindor's got 3 different jingles. Alonso's got 3 different jingles. So there's there's older jingles that I could tap into to throw in there. However, you always got to be mindful of that and understand when it's time to come up with something new.
Speaking about jingles, he's no longer on the team, so I can say this, but one of my favorite Jingle Man themes, even though it's so simple, is the Little Uzi Vert. I just want to rock with Tommy Pham.
Oh, that was such a good one, man. And Pham is, easy to love, man. He's so relatable. You know what I mean?
He's a folk hero. It's like, look, I'm gonna work hard because y'all pay me. I respect that.
And another thing about that Lil Uzi Vert version was you could clearly see a demographical divide with that correlates with the engagements that I got, right? Okay. So with the Lil Uzi Vert fam, I got a much younger support engagement wise with that. When I did the Slam parody for fam, it was the older, it was the older generation, right? So that was really interesting to see.
So I got to ask about the science of it all then, because you do jingles outside of this as well. Like, is it interesting, like the A/B testing side of it? Do you approach it as a science, or is it kind of like, no, man, I'm gonna put it out there, see what happens? Or you're like, you know what, I feel like the younger generation doesn't understand this player. I'm gonna do something along those lines. Like, what's the science behind it?
So as far as going into a jingle and thinking about demographics as it pertains to engagement, I do not think ahead. However, after the fact, I do observe and then, do the scientific analysis after the fact. If something comes to my mind that correlates with a player that has a good syllable match and a word match, I just go full throttle at it. However, I do know off the top, ahead of time, who is in my audience and where the demographics are, right? So my crowd tends to skew older. So the higher engagements typically occur, with the older parodies, right? Where when you have me trying to go Lil Uzi Vert, it's not going to be as popular because less of my audience, I would say about a quarter of my audience wouldn't even know the reference. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For those of you who aren't Little Uzi Vert fan, he's like in this weird like arena rap phase that teenagers go nuts for. I played a couple proms as a DJ, just like it just shuts the whole thing down. You know what I mean? Nakamura. Okay. All right. I'm getting out of it. So sorry.
Yeah, my kids put me on the Little Uzi Vert, and they told me, and I thought they were over exaggerating, but apparently after doing further research, they seem to be correct. But he's like their generation's like Biggie, like that type of level, that type of ilk. So that made me sit back and pay attention.
So you talked about your kids, man. You are a family man, making sure that people enjoy their time at the park as well. I've heard that baseball, more than other sports, really is like the familial passing down the sport. Now, you said your origins were pretty much cold, but what's it like passing down your love of baseball to the next generation?
Great question. So both of my kids aren't primarily baseball fans. They don't watch baseball as much as I did as a kid. And they still don't do that to this day. They pay attention to the Mets. They know what's going on because they hear their father constantly screaming random stuff at the television. And also when they go to the games, they know who the players are. They play MLB The Show, so they are familiar with the players. But it's hard for them to keep the attention span. And I think that's why baseball is making the changes that they are now to try and hone in the generation. But the changes haven't been enough to affect my Gen Z kids, right? But they will be going to Mets games into their adulthood. I feel like they like the game enough to attend in the future with their children, or even when they drive their own cars and have their own hangouts, a Mets tailgate will be part of it, I feel like, to some extent. So while they're not diehards like their father, they are baseball fans, but more in a casual sense.
Well, I'm glad you asked that. That's my next question. Over the past couple years, or Major League Baseball has tried some changes to update the game to make it more relevant. Let the kids play initiative, the pitch clock, the runner on the 10th inning, which is the only thing I don't really like myself personally. But is it working? Can it be a way to engage with the younger generation? It feels like there's a lot of more casual fans of the sport at my age and younger than ever before.
I think it's working, but I don't think it's working fast enough. Right. I think we may be a little too late for Gen Z. And I think that they need to start making even more changes for Gen Alpha. And there's an opportunity for them to at least get some of that crowd.
Yeah.
I think Gen Z's mind is already made up.
I don't want to put you on the spot here, but what's missing in your opinion?
I just think the commercial breaks, the mound visits. I feel like they're trying to address all of that, though. There's too much interruption. It's really the nature of the game itself. Unfortunately, it doesn't lend itself to the younger generations because of how they came up. Like everything's instant, right? Nobody has to wait for anything. Now you have a computer in your pocket that you have access to. If you have a question, you don't have to go to the library. You don't have to go through your encyclopedia collection, You know what I mean? It's right there. So, unfortunately, baseball, while they're trying to make those changes, it's hard to come up with, making it faster. But essentially, the overall blanket of a solution, without getting too intricate, is somehow you got to keep continuing to make it faster to maintain the attention of the younger generations.
You said something that unlocked the core memory of mine. Because we had two sets of encyclopedias, and parents thought that was it. I got you encyclopedias. Look it up. Like that was how they said their knowledge.
Yeah.
So look, you are pretty much, and thank you so very much for doing it, because you're very client facing when it comes to the fringe characters of the fandom. And this has been a year where we've seen the Rally Pimp. This is the year we've seen Grimace. Like, what's that like being among that pantheon of characters, to say the least?
I feel like our fan base is so like diverse and eclectic. I feel like there's room for everyone, right? Some come, some go, some withstand the test of time. But the way that Jingle Nation and the New York Mets have embraced me is an honor. It's an absolute honor. And for me to have a venue to act like an absolute idiot, is fantastic to me. Like, and it's very valuable for me. Very self-serving, right? It gives me an avenue, a release. So I'm honored. The Rally Pimp, he seems like a great kid and deserves the attention that he got. Grimace is just a symptom of our psychosis as a fandom. Anything goes right, don't change it. Just let it run. Give it attention,
Yeah.
So it's nice.
I'm kind of jealous in a good way that my man Jingle Man got the athlete logo deal. He got merch with his face on it, the Neon Project. That's another thing that had a lot of groundswell a couple seasons ago about athlete logos doing these Shea Stadium like cutouts. But yours is pretty dope. In fact, I was like, I'm in Beard Gang too. Maybe I can wear it and pass it off as myself. what's that collab like? Was that a phone call, or it was like, hey man, I'm gonna put you on a shirt? I'm in.
I'm sorry. Just got a call. Sorry about that. So athlete logos, am I still there? You got
me. Yeah, you're here. You're here. Yeah.
All right. Athlete logos, and I just started talking back and forth. And when he started making those shirts, I'm like, yo, I got an idea. And then I called him up. I was like, all right, let's do like a collab. Here's what I'm thinking. And then when he put him out there, it was just beautiful. We're buddies now. We talk to this day. If you want a shirt, just copy one, man. The link is still live. I represent all of Jingle Nation. It's okay. You can get a shirt. It don't have to be you. It could be me, bro.
I like how you make it like an opportunity for you. Yo, man, listen, just get a shirt. You'll be fine. All right, so we talked about collabs. One of the first episodes of this podcast, In the Booth, we sat down with J.R. Simpson Music, someone you collab with a bunch of times, which it's really funny because it's like two different kind of energies, but it works together like yin and yang, peanut butter and jelly. What's the process like? It looks like you jingle first, the music gets backing, or does it go in reverse? Like, what's the process there?
I just want to say shout out to J.R. Simpson. I mean, what a fantastic kid. He is like the opposite of me. He's innocent. He's pure. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't curse. He's everything you want your kid to be. And then you got the Jingle Man, right? So it's great working with that kid. So essentially how the relationship goes is, well, hold on, let me back up for a second. He actually found me through Athlete Logos. So Athlete Logos and I were chopping it up out in the open, and I just made like a Let's Get It On parody to Let the Kids Play. Then JR laced it with some music, and then we took off. We started to do a whole bunch of collabs. For the most part, how the cadence goes is Jordan or I will come up with an aggregate bird's eye view concept, marrying a player to a parody, right? And then either him or I write it, and then I perform it, send him the video, and then he laces the track, and then boom, we got it from there.
Oh wow! And there's some songs where like, oh man, JR, you got to hit this up, or is it kind of like you put it out there, you call them up beforehand? What's it like? Also, the actual group chat, if you will.
So if so here's a interesting. It's so different. So I could be the one hitting him up with an idea first, right?
Okay.
And he'll be like, "I like it. Let's do it." And then it'll work like that. Sometimes he'll be like, "All right, this is what I think we should do," and I'm like, "Hell yeah!" And then that same cadence, I send the tape, he laces the track, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes he's writing it and he wants me to say something a certain kind of way. Then I send it, he laces the track. Sometimes we co-write it. Sometimes it's all him. There's an example. The drop it like it's hot parody to the fix the uniforms. That was all Jordan, written, produced, everything.
Yeah.
Which was fantastic. Like the JD Martinez, that was written by me. Then Jordan just laced the track beautifully. You know what I'm saying? But it's a real collaborative effort for both of us. Sometimes, like, I may be struggling with coming up with the hook, or I'll give him something. This happens a lot where I just wrote way too long, and he's like, "Yeah, this is social media, by the way, Greg.
Yeah,
let's cut it down to 30. You know what I mean? A tight 30. And then we'll go from there." So,
wow. Do you give yourself a hard cutoff? You're like, look, man, I do 2 hours and then I got work in the morning. I'm not wasting time. Or do you like hounds till you get it right the way you like it? Like, what's the actual like factory?
That's the thing about Jordan and I. You ever just work with somebody that it's just easy chemistry? We never spend that much time on the projects. They don't take that long, especially on my end from a writing standpoint. Music wise, I'm not going to speak for him. Yes, that takes more time putting together and producing and cutting the video and all that stuff. Yeah. That takes more time than my part. My part is I go to the lab, I cook it up, boom, we're out of here. And depending on how Jordan's schedule is, that'll depend on how long his end of it takes, but it never takes way too much time. And as a lot of you guys have seen, like, we've been able to produce things. Somebody gets signed within a couple of hours. Sometimes we go live. So
I commend content creators in baseball because it does seem like it's a long off season, but when the games are going, they come at you thick and fast. Like, and it is a long season and a lot of games to make stuff off of. So shout out to you guys, because it does feel like it's fresh every time. It's not like I see a content piece and go, okay, that was that like last song they did. Like, everything's a different expression. That says a lot about the process.
Well, that and the fact that, Jordan is very well versed on so many different genres. Myself too, like primarily I love hip hop, but you wouldn't know it by listening to my jingles. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Shout out to 80s pop though. He be using them deep cuts in there. Like, okay, all right. I didn't start the fire. So into winter months as well, you were leaning towards the Bing Bong era over with the New York Knicks, man. What was that like? Because that team, as a Nets fan, I don't really care about this, but Knicks fans were going hype on that run they had last season, man. You were part of that as well.
Well, I wasn't really a big part of that. I was part of it. I joined Spaces. They welcomed me with open arms. I was very happy to be a part of it. To be honest with you, as a Knicks fan, the Knicks are legitimately my heart. So I'm a huge Knicks fan. I just don't produce a lot of content for the Knicks because, it was METS Twitter that has lifted me up into this position, right? So the majority of my following is METS fans. However, I'm a very passionate Knicks fan. And since people have noticed that, thank you for noticing. I have gotten a few calls, and hopefully there's going to be some really cool things in the future. But to answer your question, that ride was absolutely phenomenal. And the realization that our organization is overall in good health and in good direction is so refreshing because it's been a long time.
Absolutely. As much as I tease, because like of all like my sports preferences, like the basketball is kind of like I'm okay. Like I know there is a rivalry between Brooklyn and New York, but it's fine.
Oh, that's
yeah,
not a rivalry. It's too
that's what I'm saying.
one-sided to be a
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The same thing Braves fans said with the Truist the other day. Well, I get that though, but yes, you want to see teams be as strong as possible. You want to have those things, and New York as a franchise, New York sports has been down bad for a long time. In fact, the only team that was even close to being a championship was a Liberty, and even they choked last season. So I want somebody to win from New York, man. Please.
The Liberty are on their way, though. Watch it. It's the revenge tour this year.
They better. Well, first of all, the WNBA finals need to be better scheduled. That whole Monday, Wednesday, 4 days off, game 3 stuff ain't gonna fly. But yes, I hope they win something.
I agree.
One of the OG teams in WNBA to not win a championship. That's a terrible stat. Terrible stat. But I do. I'm a fan of them as well. Even though I live out here in LA, I make sure to catch them because they were here recently at the Sparks.
Yep, they beat them.
Yep. All right. Finally. So before we get out of here, though, there's some quick questions I ask almost every guest here called the check swing. Kind of a lightning round, but take as much time as you want. Not a big deal. You down? Okay. All right. So as of right now, who is your favorite current player?
My favorite current player is, I can't say Jeff because he's really frustrating right now. I'm gonna go with Francisco Alvarez.
Oh, okay. Well, I would have said my captain, Francisco Lindor, but that's just me personally. Who is your favorite player as a kid?
My favorite player as a kid. All right. So first it was Doc Gooden. We're gonna stick with Doc Gooden. It eventually became Cliff Floyd, but that was in my teen years.
Okay. Well, Doc Gooden's a class. Did you go to his retirement ceremony at all this season?
Cliff Floyd's retirement ceremony?
No, Doc Gooden. Doc Gooden.
I wasn't at Doc's, but I was at Daryl's.
Okay, that counts. Yeah. I couldn't go to either one of them. So the fact you went in spirit for me. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
What is your favorite thing to eat or drink at your local ballpark? I guess in this case, Citi Field.
Right now it's the lobster roll at Citi Field with no mayo though.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, you know what? You're not gonna believe this. So I'm from Brooklyn, and I had my first chopped cheese at Citi Field.
Wow. Did you like it?
I was fine because I grew up with Heroes, man. That was my thing. Heroes and swimming in vinegar. That was my jam. But I have a first chopped cheese. I recorded it and I was like, I get why people fly out here. I get it.
Oh, yeah. No, it's good. It's really good. Yeah.
You can't pick yourself, but what is your favorite piece of team merch?
Oh, man, now you're really putting me on the spot because I've gotten so many. I have so many friends in that space. My favorite piece of team merch. Oh, my favorite piece of team merch that I own.
Yeah.
Oh, I got a real nice METS jacket that it's like a retro 90s. It's got that material. I don't want to say velour because it's not velour.
Okay.
It's that old school.
The satin jackets.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what's up.
What'd you say?
Like the satin jackets?
Yes, satin.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
METS jacket. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. If you got a legit one, then that should be number one with a bullet. That's an investment.
Sir. Yep.
If the Mets didn't exist, who would be your second team?
Right now, the Minnesota Twins.
I gotta ask why. Not to hate. It's just kind of like that's a random selection.
A Twitter friend of mine, Commissioner Shayla, she got me into the Twins because she posts about them all the time, and she hates the Yankees. I hate the Yankees. And there's also a third team, the Cleveland. Well, I can't call them the Indians, the Cleveland Guardians.
Right.
I'm down with them too because those '90s battles they had with Kenny Lofton and them against the Yankees.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because like I'm a Sox fan because of how Frank Thomas was smacking around the Yankees. That was the
and Ortiz, man, you can't forget.
Yeah,
those are great times.
If you had to choose to support a team, would it be the Phillies or the Braves?
Wow, that really is a tough question. I mean, I really can't stand both teams.
Nope.
But I'm gonna have to say the Braves, because the Braves don't go out of their way that I know of to constantly talk about us in retirement ceremonies and parades.
Can we talk about that for a second? Some dude retires from another team and just tries to get a cheap pop and drag another team for no reason.
No reason at all. You're here to celebrate yourself. Like, what are you talking about us for?
I have no idea, man. Where is your favorite place to sit at the park? Are you behind home plate? Are you in the bleachers? Are you loge club?
Third base side in the 100s. Maybe in the first 10 rows. That's my favorite.
And lastly, has the team done anything for you specifically that you ever wanted to like share about, or something the Mets ever came to say, hey, look, thanks for your help. thanks for your swag online.
Not that I'm at liberty to talk about just yet.
And that's a good sign for everybody. Before we wrap this up, we talked about what it means to be a person of color who's a fan of the sport. They had Rick Wood about a week ago as we record this, and it's kind of like the celebration of the Negro Leagues. The MLB, the show, has the Negro League storylines. I know you were saying it's a bit too late for Gen Z, but Gen Alpha and the generations subsequently, is this a step in the right direction? Do you think MLB could do more to highlight Black players in the game?
Well, the integration of statistics is a huge, huge thing that was long overdue. And I'm going to try and say this as respectfully as I can, but so coming up as a little kid and always hearing about the people that played pre-Negro leagues, I'd always say to myself, but you didn't play the more athletic players. You know what I mean? So, I'm just saying. So it is what it is. So it's a huge thing to have acknowledged it, right? And I think that will help with Gen Alpha because when you're doing that, you're clearly on the right side of history. But I still think that steps need to be taken to speed the game up even more overall. But yes, the making that addition to the statistics was absolutely huge and necessary.
Well, you're going to be respectful, but I'm not going to be respectful. I want to be as disrespectful as possible, because if you can't sit here and be like, hey, man, post-racial America, get over it. Okay, we can combine stats. Oh, not like that. Come on. It was like Black people decided to opt out and make their own league. They couldn't go nowhere. So please, integrate them. All right.
And if you look at, by the way, I got to step my Negro League merch up, to be honest, because if you look at the uniforms and the merch that from back in the day that is available to us today, if we're interested, it's all beautiful stuff.
Oh yeah. So. And shout out to the Cyclones. They actually had a Negro League inspired jersey. I was trying to reach the team to see if they were going to sell it. I hope they do, because I would rock a Brooklyn Negro Leagues inspired jersey every day of the week. That's the way it goes down.
There's money to be made. There is money to be made.
And that's what motivates people to care, right? Money to be made.
Yeah.
Man, Jingleman, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate you coming on in the booth, man. I want to go out there to Citi Field. Next time I might hit you up. But if somebody wanted to connect with you, day job wise, night job wise, Mets wise, Knicks wise, other t-shirt deal wise, how do they go about doing that, brother?
You can find me on Twitter at RealBlack14. You can find me on Instagram as Jingle Mets, and you can find me on TikTok at Jingle Mets as well. So I answer DMs. So as you could tell, so I'm very open to the fan base, and if anyone wants to find me in those avenues, they surely can.
Best fans of the world, man. LGM, thanks so much.
Let's go Mets, baby! Happy birthday!